The old clock had been hanging in the Holloway family home longer than anyone could remember. Its dark wooden frame was scratched and dull, its glass face spider-webbed with hairline cracks. Most visitors assumed it was broken. After all, it rarely ticked. Days, weeks, sometimes months would pass in silence. But the Holloways knew better. The clock only ticked when someone lied. No one ever talked about it openly. Not after what happened years ago. That night, the house was too quiet. Lena Holloway stood in the hallway staring at the clock. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the cracked glass. The hands were frozen at 11:48, as they had been for years. She exhaled slowly, trying to calm the unease crawling up her spine. "It won't tick," she whispered to herself. "It hasn't in years." Behind her, the front door opened. Her younger brother, Eli, stepped inside, snow clinging to his coat. He kicked off his boots and froze when he noticed Lena standing there, motionless. "You okay?" he asked. Lena didn't turn around. "Where were you?" Eli hesitated, just a fraction of a second. The clock exploded into sound. Tick, 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 tick. Loud, furious, screaming like a heartbeat in a panic. Lena spun around, her face pale. Eli's breath caught. It's ticking." The sound filled the hallway, echoing through the old house. Each tick landed like an accusation. Lena felt her stomach twist. "You lied," she said quietly. "I didn't." Eli stopped himself, eyes darting to the clock. It ticked faster. Tick, 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 tick. His shoulders slumped. "Okay, I wasn't where I said I was." The ticking slowed, then stopped. Silence slammed down hard. Lena swallowed. "You know what that means?" Eli nodded, fear creeping into his eyes. It started again. They both knew what that meant too. The clock hadn't reacted to a lie in over 10 years, not since the night their father died. When Lena was 12, her grandmother had finally told her the truth about the clock. "It doesn't punish lies," Grandma Rose had said, her voice trembling as she dusted the shelf beneath it. "It reveals them, and sometimes the truth is dangerous." The clock had come into the family generations ago, passed down like a curse wrapped in heirloom wood. It didn't tick for small lies, white lies, polite lies. It reacted to something deeper, intentional deception, truth buried out of fear or greed. And when the clock ticked loudly, something always followed. The night their father died, the clock hadn't just ticked, it had screamed. Eli leaned against the wall now, rubbing his hands together. "I didn't mean to lie. I just didn't want you to worry." Lena crossed her arms. "You were at the docks, weren't you?" Eli looked down. The clock remained silent. Confirmation. "Why?" She pressed. He hesitated again. Tick. Just one tick. Lena's heart dropped. "Eli." "Fine," he said quickly. "I met someone. A man asking questions about Dad." The air felt heavier. What kind of questions? Eli swallowed. About the night he died. About the clock. The silence that followed felt wrong. Not peaceful. Expectant. Lena stared at the clock. The hands hadn't moved, but she had the sudden, horrifying sense that it was listening. "No one is supposed to know about it," she whispered. "Not outsiders." "I know," Eli said, "but he already knew. He knew things we never told anyone." That was when the clock screamed again. Tick, 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 tick. Faster than before. Louder, violent. Lena clutched her ears. "Stop lying!" "I'm not!" Eli shouted. The ticking didn't slow. Her breath caught. "Eli, what aren't you telling me?" His eyes glistened. "He said Dad didn't die by accident." The ticking stopped. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lena felt dizzy. "That's impossible." "He said Dad was killed," Eli continued, "because he knew something. Something the clock revealed." "No," she whispered. "Dad fell down the stairs." "That's what the police said." Eli shook his head. "The man said the police report was altered." The clock remained silent. Truth. Lena backed away slowly, her mind racing. Memories she had buried began clawing their way back. Raised voices that night, the sound of the clock screaming, her mother crying in the kitchen, her mother. Lena's chest tightened. "Where is Mom?" she asked. Eli hesitated. The clock screamed. Lena's blood turned cold. "She knows," Eli said quietly. "She always knew." The clock didn't stop ticking. It grew louder, faster, as if it had been waiting years for this moment. From upstairs, a door creaked open. Footsteps. Their mother's voice drifted down the hallway. "Why is the clock ticking?" Lena felt something shift inside her. Fear, anger, and a dawning realization she wasn't ready to face. Because tonight, the old clock wasn't just reacting to a lie. It was warning them. And whatever truth had been buried for a decade was finally demanding to be heard. Their mother stood at the top of the stairs, one hand gripping the railing as if it were the only thing holding her upright. Margaret Holloway looked older than her years in the dim hallway light, her hair streaked with gray that hadn't been there a month ago. Her eyes were fixed on the clock. It was ticking again. Not fast, not screaming, but steady, accusatory. "That clock shouldn't be making that sound," she said quietly. Lena felt her throat tighten. "You told us it was broken." Margaret's lips pressed together. The ticking grew louder. Eli stepped forward. "Mom, someone came asking about Dad." The clock sped up. Margaret closed her eyes. The truth was unraveling now, and the clock knew it. "Go to the living room," she said softly. "Both of you." They obeyed without question. The clock followed them with its sound, each tick echoing through the house like a footstep behind them. When they sat, Margaret remained standing. She looked smaller somehow. "I prayed this day wouldn't come," she said, "that the clock would stay silent forever." Lena's voice shook. "Did Dad fall, or was he pushed?" The ticking stopped. Margaret inhaled sharply. "He was killed," she said. The words felt unreal, like a story told about another family, another house. Lena felt her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "By who?" Eli whispered. Margaret sat slowly. "By someone who believed the truth was dangerous." Lena clenched her fists. "You lied to us." The clock ticked once. Margaret flinched. "Yes, tick. Yes, I lied." The ticking continued, steady and relentless. "I did it to protect you," Margaret said quickly. "To protect all of us." Eli stood up. "Protect us from what?" Margaret's gaze flicked to the hallway. From the clock, silence fell. Lena shook her head. "The clock reveals lies. That's all it does." Margaret looked at her sadly. "That's what I told myself too. But it does more than that. It draws people who are afraid of the truth, and people who want to control it." She reached into her pocket and pulled out an old yellowed photograph. She placed it on the table. It showed the clock, newer, polished, its wood gleaming. Standing beside it were several men in suits. One of them was Lena's father. "He was part of a group," Margaret continued. "Historians, collectors, people who believed certain objects held power. When they learned what the clock could do, they wanted it studied, exploited." Eli stared at the picture. "Dad wouldn't do that." "He didn't," Margaret said. "He tried to destroy it." The clock screamed. Lena jumped. "What?" "He believed some truths weren't meant to be dragged into the light," Margaret said. "He said the clock didn't just expose lies, it forced truth into the open, whether people were ready or not." Eli swallowed. "So someone stopped him?" Margaret nodded. "The man who came to see you," Lena said slowly. "Who is he?" Margaret's hands trembled. "His name is Victor Hale." The clock ticked sharply. "He was part of the group," Margaret said. "He believed the clock should be used, that lies were a disease, and truth should be forced out at any cost. At any cost." Eli repeated. Margaret looked at him. "Your father told Victor he would never let the clock leave this house." That night they argued. The clock screamed for hours. Lena felt sick. And then Dad was dead. Yes, Margaret whispered. The clock fell silent. The truth had been spoken. But Lena sensed something else now, a pressure in the air, like a storm building. You hid this for 10 years, she said. You let us believe he slipped. Margaret's voice broke. Because Victor promised if I stayed silent he would disappear. And he did. Eli shook his head. Until now. A knock echoed through the house. 3 sharp raps. The clock began ticking again, slow, deliberate. Margaret went pale. He found us. Lena stood. We don't have to open the door. The knocking came again. Then a voice, calm and certain. Mrs. Holloway, I know you're home. The ticking grew louder. Victor Hale had returned, and the clock knew he was lying. The knocking stopped. That silence was worse than the sound. Lena's heart hammered as she stared at the front door. The clock continued its slow, deliberate ticking, as if counting down to something inevitable. Each tick pressed against her nerves. Margaret whispered, Don't answer. Eli took a step toward the hallway anyway. We can't pretend he'll go away. The clock ticked louder. Lena grabbed Eli's arm. Wait. Before anyone could decide, the door handle turned. D. Click. Margaret gasped. I locked it. The door creaked open. Victor Hale stood framed in the doorway, tall and composed, his gray coat dusted with snow. His smile was polite, practiced, the kind meant to put people at ease. The clock screamed, tick, 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 tick. Victor's smile faltered for just a moment. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. So, he said softly, stepping inside without invitation, it still works. Lena felt rage surge through her fear. Get out. Victor raised his hands calmly. I'm not here to hurt anyone. The ticking intensified. Margaret stood, her voice shaking. You promised you'd leave us alone. Victor sighed. I did. And I meant it. At the time. The clock screamed louder, the sound echoing through the walls like a siren. You're lying, Eli said, his voice hard. Victor tilted his head, studying the clock with fascination rather than fear. Not entirely. The ticking slowed but didn't stop. Lena realized something then, something that made her blood run cold. The clock wasn't just reacting to lies, it was reacting to intent. What do you want? She demanded. Victor's gaze locked onto hers. The truth. The clock ticked once. Your father believed truth was dangerous, Victor continued. I believe lies are... The clock erupted again. Victor exhaled, clearly unsettled now. It's getting louder than it used to, Margaret whispered. Because you're closer to the truth than you ever were before. Victor's eyes darkened. Good. He walked farther into the house. With each step, the ticking followed him, loud and aggressive, as if warning them. Lena blocked his path. You killed our father. The ticking stopped. Victor froze. For the first time, his calm cracked. I didn't push him, he said. Tick. I didn't mean for him to die. Tick. He fell. Tick, tick, tick. Victor clenched his jaw. He was already unstable. The clock had driven him to paranoia. Oh, silence. Margaret whispered. You argued with him for hours. Victor nodded slowly. Yes. The clock stayed silent. You threatened him, Eli said. Victor swallowed. Yes. Still silent. You told him the truth would come out whether he liked it or not, Lena said. Victor closed his eyes. Yes. The clock did not tick. Lena's voice dropped, and when he tried to destroy the clock, you stopped him. The clock screamed. Victor staggered back as if struck. His composure shattered. The screaming grew unbearable. You grabbed him, Lena continued, the words pouring out of her as if the clock itself were pushing them forward. You tried to pull him away from it. Victor's face twisted. I didn't mean... He fell, Eli whispered. Silence. The truth settled like ash. Victor sank into a chair. I didn't kill him, he said weakly. But I caused it. The clock went quiet. Lena realized then what her father had meant. The clock didn't judge. It forced confession. Victor looked up at them, eyes hollow. I stayed away because the clock punished me. Every time I lied to myself, to others, I could hear it in my head, ticking. I thought distance would silence it. Margaret whispered, "Why now?" Victor laughed bitterly. "Because there are more clocks." The air shifted. "What?" Eli said. Victor leaned forward. "Your father wasn't the only one who found them. Objects like this exist all over the world, and people are using them." The clock ticked once. "There's one in Prague that reveals betrayal," Victor continued. "Another in Tokyo that reacts to unspoken regret. Governments want them. Corporations want them." The ticking grew uneasy, irregular. "And someone else has found one worse than this," Victor said quietly. "One that doesn't just reveal lies." Lena felt dread coil in her chest. "What does it do?" Victor looked at the clock. "It forces truth into the world, exposes secret. No one survives knowing." The clock screamed. "That's why I need this one," Victor said urgently. "It's the key to stopping the others." Margaret shook her head. "You always justify yourself. Tick." Victor slammed his fist on the table. "People are dying." The ticking slowed, but didn't stop. "Not from lies," Victor continued. "From the truth being revealed too fast. Marriages destroyed. Governments collapsed. Riots. Suicides." The clock fell silent. Lena felt sick. "You don't want to stop it," she said softly. "You want to control it." The clock screamed louder than ever before. Victor stood abruptly. "I don't have time for this." The ticking turned violent, echoing through the house like pounding fists. Eli shouted, "You can't take it!" Victor's eyes locked onto the clock. "It doesn't belong to you." The clock screamed. "No," Lena said, stepping between him and the hallway. "It belongs to the truth." The clock suddenly stopped. Complete silence. Victor froze. Lena felt it then, an awareness sharp and cold. The clock wasn't reacting anymore. It was choosing. From the hallway came a sound none of them had ever heard before. The hands of the clock moved, slowly, deliberately. For the first time in decades, the clock advanced, and somewhere deep inside the house, something ancient awakened. The sound of the clock's hands moving was soft, almost gentle, yet it terrified Lena more than the screaming ever had. Click, click. Each movement felt deliberate, purposeful, like a decision being made. Victor backed away slowly. "That's never happened before," Margaret whispered. "It's not supposed to move." The clock ticked once, not loud, not angry, certain. Lena felt an odd pressure behind her eyes, as though memories were being stirred awake. Images flickered, her father sitting beneath the clock late at night, scribbling notes, whispering to himself, words he never finished say. "Ing." "The clock isn't reacting to lies anymore," Lena said slowly. "It's revealing." Victor shook his head. "That's impossible." The clock ticked again. The air in the house shifted, heavy and electric. Then a sound drifted down from upstairs, a drawer sliding open. Eli stiffened. "No one's up there." Another sound followed, papers rustling. Margaret's face drained of color. "Your father's study." Lena moved first, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. Each step felt wrong, like the house itself was holding its breath. The light in the study was on, the desk drawer was open. Inside lay a stack of old notebooks Lena had never seen before. Their covers were worn, filled with her father's handwriting. The clock ticked. Lena picked one up. The first page was dated the week before his death. If the clock ever starts moving again, it means someone is trying to control the truth. Her hands trembled. Eli leaned over her shoulder. He knew this would happen. Footsteps sounded behind them. Victor stood in the doorway, pale. "He planned for me." Lena flipped pages quickly. "The clock does not belong to blood. It belongs to the one who listens without desire." "What does that mean?" Eli asked. The clock ticked. Suddenly, another drawer slid open by itself. Inside was a small brass key. Victor's breath caught. That wasn't there before. Lena felt it, a pull in her chest, like the clock was calling her. She picked up the key. The ticking stopped. Victor stared. "It responds to you," Margaret whispered. "Your father always said you understood silence better than sound." Victor stepped forward. "Lena, listen to me. You don't know what you're holding." The clock ticked once. Victor froze. "You're lying again," Lena said quietly. "I'm trying to save lives," Victor snapped. "Tick." "You're afraid," she replied, "because the clock won't obey you." The ticking stopped. Victor's voice softened. "Give me the key. Together, we can control what gets revealed." The clock screamed. Lena shook her head. "That's the problem. Truth isn't meant to be controlled." The walls creaked. The clock's glass cracked further, a thin line spreading across its face like a scar. Victor stepped back in horror. "It's breaking." "No," Margaret said softly. "It's choosing." Lena felt warmth in her palm. The key glowed faintly. Suddenly, Victor cried out and collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. Images poured from him like smoke. Arguments, threats, his hand grabbing Lena's father's sleeve. The moment of loss and panic as he fell. Truths Victor had buried screamed their way out. The clock ticked steadily. Victor sobbed. "Make it stop," Lena whispered. "It will, when you stop lying to yourself." Slowly the ticking faded. Victor lay on the floor, broken and silent. Eli stared at Lena. "What are you?" She shook her head. "Just someone listening." The clock clicked once more. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret's voice trembled. "People are coming!" Lena looked back at the clock. She understood now. The clock didn't exist to punish lies. It existed to prepare the world for truth. And tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Red and blue lights washed across the walls of the Holloway house, flickering like restless ghosts. The sound of sirens grew louder, then stopped abruptly outside. Doors slammed. Footsteps crunched through the snow. The clock ticked once. Lena stood in the hallway, the brass key warm in her hand, the old clock looming above her like an ancient judge that had finally spoken. She felt no fear now, only clarity. Victor lay on the floor of the study, unconscious but breathing. His face looked older somehow, stripped of pretense. The truth had hollowed him out. Margaret sat beside him, staring at her hands. When the police ask, "What do we say?" Lena looked at the clock. It remained silent. "We tell the truth," she said. The front door burst open. Officers rushed in, weapons raised, then froze at the sight of Victor on the floor. "What happened here?" one of them demanded. Lena met his gaze. "A confession." The clock ticked once. The officer frowned. "A confession to what?" "To a death," Lena replied. 10 years ago, the ticking stopped. Hours later, the house was filled with people. Police, paramedics, investigators. Questions poured in, but lies did not. Each time someone tried to twist the truth, the clock responded. Not loudly, just enough. Enough to stop them. Enough to force honesty. Word spread quickly. A detective whispered to another about the clock. A paramedic swore she heard it react when someone lied about a timeline. By morning, the house was cordoned off, and the world began to notice. Journalists gathered beyond the tape. Rumors spread online. A video surfaced. Someone had filmed the clock ticking during an interrogation. By noon, officials arrived. By nightfall, men in dark coats stood in the hallway, studying the clock with hunger in their eyes. Lena watched them carefully. One of them smiled. "We'd like to relocate this artifact for safekeeping," the clock screamed. The man's smile vanished. "No," Lena said simply. He scoffed. "You don't have authority." Tick. His confidence faltered. "This clock doesn't belong to governments," Lena continued. It belongs where truth is chosen, not forced. The man backed away slowly. That night, after the house finally emptied, Lena sat alone beneath the clock. The ticking was gone. The silence felt earned. She slid the brass key into a hidden slot beneath the clock's frame. The wood shifted. Inside was a mechanism far simpler than she expected. No magic, no gears beyond time, just a mirror. Lena understood then. The clock didn't reveal lies. People did. When fact ed with themselves. She turned the key. The clock stopped forever. No ticking, no screaming, just wood, glass, and silence. Eli stood in the doorway. "Is it over?" Lena nodded. "It's finished its work." "What if the world needs it again?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "The world doesn't need a clock to tell the truth. It needs people willing to listen." The next morning, the Holloway house felt lighter. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The old clock hung quietly, powerless at last. But the truth it revealed could never be undone. Victor Hale would stand trial. Their father's name would be cleared. And Lena would carry the lesson forward, not as a guardian of a cursed object, but as someone who understood the weight of honesty. As she left the house, Lena glanced back one final time. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she heard a faint tick. But it wasn't the clock. It was her own heartbeat, steady, honest, alive.